Hi, everybody. I'm here with Monica Chu, who's going to be playing Ravel on our final session of our piano conversations with Paul Hirsch. And Monica, I'm so glad you're going to be with us for these sessions. It's really going to be fun.
Hi, Lolly. Thanks so much for having me. I think it's really great that you're organizing this workshop with Paul.
Thanks. I'm glad that it's going to work out. Tell me a little bit about how you got connected with Paul. Did you study with him at the conservatory?
Yes, I did. I did my master's under Paul way back in the dark ages, back in, gosh, if I can even remember the year. I can't remember the year. It was over 20 years ago, back when I was a wee lass of 20.
Wow.
I should be able to remember how old I am. Gosh, 24 years ago. So
Wow.
anyway, I had just moved from the East Coast where I got my undergraduate degree in North Carolina and was really happy to come out to California and study with Paul for a year. And that was back when the conservatory was at that little converted building in Sunset District.
So, I remember it well.
Yeah, so a lot has changed since then. It's so funny. I hadn't seen Paul in many, many years before a couple of years ago. I basically took a long time off of music after I finished my master's with him. And it's been really nice to reconnect.
So you've been doing the piano class with Paul and his small group of pianists for that couple of years now?
Well, let's see. I think that Hey Young Min, who's also on this series, is the originator of the current iteration of the Paul's piano class. And I started coming in the summertime.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful to get pianists together to talk about the music, and it's the class that I attended was so lively. So one thing that I'm really excited about for this workshop is that we're not focusing on a traditional masterclass format at all. It's much more about why you play what you play rather than how you play what you play. Tell us about the Ravel that you're going to bring.
Okay. So actually, in the last few years, I've been concentrating a lot on modern music. And so the Ravel is actually quite old for me. It was written over 100 years ago. It's part of one of Ravel's most famous piano suites called Miroirs, which is a 5-movement work that I think he wrote around 1915 or so. Of course, his other major piano work, well, he has many major piano works, but his most famous is probably Gaspard de la Nuit. This one is probably a close second to that. And I'll be playing the one of the middle movements called Une barque sur l'océan, which means a boat on the ocean. And I actually learned this piece for a recital program that I'm doing that's based around ice and water. So I'll be playing some of Miroirs, including Une barque, which you'll hear as part of Lolly's series. And then a couple of pieces that I wrote. One is about a walrus who crosses the ocean on an iceberg, and it has a subtext of climate change, of course. Another piece that I wrote that has to do with Itsy Bitsy Spider, who, of course, climbed up the water spout and got rained on. And a new piece, a relatively new piece by Ian Dickey from 2008 about the ice cap that sits at the top of the planet and reflects the sun away from Earth to cool it down, called White Parasol, and some other pieces that feel icy to me. So anyway, that's that program, and I just learned the Ravel in December, so we'll see.
When are you performing these?
I don't have very many dates yet, but one of the dates is May 7th, I believe. It's
fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's right before your session on our series. So we'll make sure that people know about that and hope that they can come and listen. and get to know you a little better.
Oh, thanks, Lolly.
So the Ravel for you is, as you say, it's really going back a long way musically. And does it have resonance for you in terms of what you're focused on now?
Oh, definitely. So I started writing music not too long ago. And as a pianist, I'm very intimidated by piano music simply because there's such a large body of work for piano, probably more than any other instrument. So it's incredibly intimidating to try to write for piano, given that so much has already been contributed. Like, what can you say that's new? And so I still study piano music, of course. And Ravel is one of those composers whose writing for piano is just so incredibly idiomatic. And one of the things that I love about his work is how well it lies underneath the hands. So it's very different from, say, Brahms, which I just find terribly awkward, and Beethoven, which is also awkward a lot of times. Ravel really thinks about the position of the hand and also where it is on the keyboard. And even though he writes a lot of really difficult music, one always feels as though he really thought about the pianist in a way that you wouldn't say necessarily about Brahms or Beethoven.
That's really interesting. I think of Ravel so much as an orchestrator, somebody who
Oh,
thinks in colors and thinks about the details of how voices work together. And I wonder if that translates for you into his piano music.
absolutely. I mean, gosh, I think that he is probably one of the best orchestrators of all time. And it's exactly as you said. I think that some of his most famous pieces, like Bolero or, Oiseau Triste, which is another movement from Miroirs, or Le Gibet, are really color studies. And if you look at them purely from a technical point of view, if the only thing that you're valuing is getting out as many notes as possible, then you're not going to see the artistry in that. But if you really approach them as tone color poems, then you'll start to realize, wow, this music is incredibly deep.
That's wonderful. So tell me a little bit about what it's like to work with Paul. He's such an intelligent and generous thinker, and he really I my experience is that his imaginative voice really brings out the musical essence of what he's talking about. What's it like to work with him?
Well, Paul is certainly a Renaissance man. As you know, he has many, many areas of interests, and has really achieved high levels of knowledge in a lot of different areas, like literature. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Paul is his sort of curmudgeonliness about piano music and playing the piano. Of course, of course, there's room in our lives for, optimism and, and things like that. Not to say that Paul is pessimistic, but he doesn't. What I'm trying to say is that he doesn't care how difficult a piece is, or necessarily how well regarded it is in the literature, or how much you've struggled just to get the notes, get the notes out of the instrument. It's very much an approach of, if it can be more musical, then let's try to make it more musical or more effective. So that's one of the things that I appreciate about Paul. You know, I only worked with him for a year when I was 20. And my life was a lot different then than it is now. I mean, obviously I was a lot younger, but you know, I was going to school. I didn't have a sense of what what was going to happen after school necessarily. Now I'm in a very different place. Although I have a lot more experience performing than composing, it's definitely something that I want to work on more than being primarily a performer these days. And that's for a number of reasons. And so in a lot of ways, my the things that I gain out of going to studio class with Paul are just, well, always, of course, the other players who come and share music is the best part. You know, I can reject a lot of more things that Paul says now than I could when I was 20. You know, Paul, of course, is wonderful, and his approach tends to be very score based, I would say. So, but now that I'm also a composer, I know how much there is that can't be expressed in a score. And I've also had many, many experiences working with living composers where people have been surprised at what I bring out in a score that they didn't expect. And so I view music making as much more of a collaboration between the performer and the composer, and frankly, the audience. And I think that's a little different from how Paul views music.
Well, I love that approach because, of course, I think of the music as you're listening. It's such an imaginative and living experience. It's not at all about what, you know, that the music doesn't live in a glass case in a museum. You know, it's in the moment that we're experiencing it, whatever the artist is bringing out, and however the composer was able to express those thoughts or those gestures, and however the performer is able to hear them and
right, and how it fits into the program. And quite honestly, like, I've had the experience so many times when somebody has told me how much they liked something that I did when I was so displeased with it, or, you know, I thought I did something great and like nobody turned up, or, you know, just like the combination of like people turning up and liking your music, the venue being terrific, and feeling like you played well. Like, those never happened all at the same time for me. So, you know, how the person felt about their dinner, or, you know, how they got to the concert has so much more to do with how they experience the music sometimes than how you actually play. And that's rather humbling. And you know, we can only ever try our best and try to respond to what's going on around us, whether that's something that just how we read the audience, how we're feeling that day, what's going on in the world around us.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Well, I think this is going to be a really fun conversation, and we're really looking forward to being together and hearing Ravel and getting to know you better as a pianist, and also as, you know, just bringing, as you just said, all those elements of our experience to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Lolly. I'm really looking forward to learning the Ravel better by the time I play it for you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll see you on May 11th at 5:30. This will be the last session of our 4-workshop session of Piano Conversations with Paul Hirsch. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks, Lolly.
See you then.